Greetings and salutations. I am your humble Adobe instructor, AJ Wood, and this is a PSD Tuts tutorial. Today we have an introduction to optimizing your settings and performance inside of Photoshop. We'll begin by opening up the Preferences dialog box. You can do that by pressing Command K on a Mac or Control K on a PC. As you can see on the screen, I'm in the General category, and the first item that we'll look at is Image Interpolation. Notice by default it's set to bicubic, but depending on your needs, you could change this to bicubic smoother or sharper. Now, changing the preference here will impact the image size dialog box, as well as the crop tool. Some other settings you can change to boost performance. You can uncheck export to clipboard. This will give you a little bit of a boost because you can actually bypass the clipboard whenever you use the move tool to drag between Photoshop document windows. You'll also notice down at the bottom I have checked the option called history log. By checking the history log, you can save all of your history steps and write them to the metadata of your PSD. The benefit of this is you can go back and look through those settings and see how you created your filters, your effects, what settings you use for blend modes and layer types. It'll all be there in the Photoshop file. To get the most benefit, I do suggest under log items, change that from sessions only to be detailed. If we take a look at the interface, you might want to uncheck your enable gestures, especially if you're on a Mac laptop. I know in my case, I'm a little fat-fingered and I always slam that touchpad and it gets in my way. If we take a look at file handling, another way to boost performance, turn the image previews off. Set that to never save. You might also choose to turn off maximize PSD and PSP file compatibility. If you do that, it does mean that you can't hand off your Photoshop document to an older version of Photoshop, but if that's not something you need, you'll save not only in PSD file size, you'll improve performance. If we go to the performance category, here there are lots of fields. You'll notice as I hover from memory usage to history and cache to even GPU settings, the description down at the bottom of the dialog box changes and really provides you with a lot of detailed information. Here's some quick tips. Under memory usage, the default is probably going to be around 70%. If you only use Photoshop, you don't have any other applications open, it's okay to slam the memory usage to 100% RAM. If you have 8 gigs of RAM or higher, if you're utilizing small files, you could probably get away with using 85 to 90% of your RAM. How are you going to know how much RAM is too much or too little? You need to look at your efficiency indicator. I've gone ahead and clicked OK and closed the dialog box because I want you to see down in the status bar inside of Photoshop there is an option called efficiency. And this is going to tell you how you should set performance and if you need to change out your hardware. Notice that right now my efficiency is at 100%. If your efficiency reads at 100%, your document, and more importantly all the documents you have open, are all loaded into RAM. If you see efficiency dip below 100%, anytime that happens, you're writing out to the scratch disks and utilizing virtual memory. If you discover that your efficiency is well below 90%, you need to allocate more RAM to Photoshop, or you need to buy additional RAM and install it in your computer. So if I did have a problem with efficiency, let's go back to the performance category under preferences. I could allocate more RAM first. I could also change my history and cache. To change the history and cache, we could start by adjusting the history states. If you drop this down to 5, this means effectively you have 5 undos. Okay? Or more specifically, I can step backwards in the history panel 5 times. Some people get nervous not having 20, but I'll utilize a lot less RAM. If you take a look at the cache levels, if you work primarily with smaller files but lots of layers, you could probably drop the cache down to 1 and see a huge boost in performance. If you're somebody who utilizes very large files, you're a photographer and you don't use a lot of layers, then you might actually benefit from having the cache set to a high number, maxing it out at 8. The next item that you could tweak for performance would be the cache tile size. And again, this really goes back to how you utilize Photoshop. If you're someone who uses a lot of filters and effects, you use the sharpen filter, you use the Gaussian blur filter, then you might benefit from a larger cache tile size. If you're someone who is a designer and you use a lot of painted or brush-based effects, if you do a lot of detail work, a lot of brush detail work, then you would benefit from a smaller cache tile size. What does the cache mean? The cache actually just affects how Photoshop redraws on the screen. So higher cache levels means more redraws saved into RAM. Lower cache levels means fewer redraws saved into RAM. So this has been some quick tips related to performance inside of Photoshop. Please join me next time as I talk more about panels and other changes you can make to improve the startup times inside of Photoshop. My name's AJ Wood, and as always, I appreciate you being here for these PSD Touch tutorials. Have an excellent day.